Welcome into the Late Night Gamecock Show. It is March 5th, 2025. Alex, I feel like I say this after we start every single episode, but dude, it's March.
It's crazy to think, like, when it felt like the new year just started. And then, February kind of went by fast and some moments went by a little bit slow with basketball season. But it's crazy. It's already March 5th. And before we know it, spring practice and spring game going to be here.
Dude, it's wild. Like, we had snowflakes like 2 weeks ago in Florence. And now it's March and I don't know what to do with myself. This is ridiculous. I will say off the top, if there's any delay between me and Alex, it's not Alex's fault for the first time. It's my fault. My internet line got cut earlier yesterday, and we're still waiting on AT&T to come out here and fix it. So appreciate everyone that's watching tonight. Alex, I think it was a good week and a bad week for Gamecock sports. Women's basketball, good. Men's basketball, good. Softball, good. Baseball, not so good. And then obviously we had the game last night with the men's team on the basketball side.
Yeah, let's start with, I guess, the good men's basketball side. I guess for the weekend it was good with the win. And then obviously I know we're going to get into a little bit of what happened last night against Georgia. But, that game this weekend, you think about it, Arkansas, they got off to a horrible start offensively in that game. And then South Carolina kind of found a way to do enough offensively, I think, in the first half to kind of create enough separation. And it really was never a game in that second half. And, South Carolina really ran away with it. And the final score of that game was closer than it actually was, too. And that was probably South Carolina's, maybe other than the Clemson game, their best all-around performance. I thought they played really well on both sides of the court. And it did have some help, from Arkansas just not doing anything well offensively. But, to start off there, that was good for the weekend. And then, obviously baseball side of things like that, we're going to dive a little bit more into it after we do the opening credits. But that is a lot of things just didn't go right for South Carolina this weekend on the baseball diamond. But I know we're getting ready to jump all into that here.
Yeah, we were about to jump right in a little bit. Alex is going to roll the credits. But one of the funniest things I saw was an Arkansas fan on 24/7 saying that the reason that South Carolina won that game, not by as many points as they won that game, but just the reason they won that game is because they loosened the rims the entire week and practiced on them, then tightened the rims before Arkansas had their shoot around, and then loosened the rims again for the Gamecocks who have been practicing on that all week. Like, there are a lot of takes out there that I can say, okay, maybe. There are a lot of conspiracy theories that I can maybe say, okay, yeah, did we land on the moon? I think we did. but oh my. So anyway, Alex, before the introduction, can you give an update on scores for the softball team, the baseball team, and then maybe around the SEC, because we're starting at 8:00 tonight?
Yeah, so I'm sitting here trying to pull up the baseball score. Obviously, it started off pretty big for South Carolina with Evan Stone hitting the 2-run homer in the first inning, when really it sounds like the wind is kind of blowing maybe from center field. But, South Carolina right now is up 5-1. Evan Stone also has a homer. And, I think, if Evan Stone can kind of get going, that'd be huge for this offense because we know what he can do defensively. But, right now up 5-1, top of the fourth. So it's a really good start right now for South Carolina on baseball.
Yeah, and then softball, I think.
I'm
seeing EXO, who we love. EXO said it's 10-2. Yeah, I have no internet, so I can't look at anything. But a lot of big games in the SEC this week, but weekend and then tonight. But we'll get those to you soon enough. But Alex, go ahead and roll the intro here for everybody.
Welcome to the Late Night Gamecock Show from Chief Sports South Carolina. Here are your hosts, Matt Anderson and Alex Jones of thebigspur.com.
So on the show tonight, we got a lot to talk about, and I had my phone up here and it's going to fall down occasionally. But the good and the bad from the previous week, Alex, just looking at it, we're going to talk some baseball, we're going to talk basketball, and Alex Jones is going to give an in-depth recruiting insider late night Gamecock show report. And I'm very excited for that because look, y'all, I know a little bit, but Alex knows way more than I do. But let's start with baseball, Alex. I'm going to start with the Clemson series. Obviously, both of us thought that the Gamecocks would win 2 out of 3 games. Didn't work out that way. And I look at it, and it's just tough. It's real tough because the Gamecocks lost 5-3 on Friday night, and the game was 4-3 through 6 innings. And you look at it, Clemson had 8 hits and 11 left on base. The Gamecocks had 5 hits and 9 left on base. But to be 4-3 through 6, like it, and it's going to be a recurring theme in what I talk about. But I mean, were you worried after the first game, Alex, for the Gamecocks, or do you think they'd figure it out? It was just tough at Clemson.
Yeah, I kind of thought they would get it figured out. I mean, they had their chances in that game at Doug Kingsmore on Friday night. I mean, you think about that 9th inning, they had 2 balls that were, I mean, the first one, the call for a hit, I mean, that one was, I mean, very close. I mean, the guy caught that really right at the wall. And then Petrie's ball, too. I think it was Petrie, hit that ball that was right at the wall, too. And you just felt like, all right, South Carolina went to Clemson. It's the home games in this series are going to be really hard to win. And, I think, or going on the road in this series is very hard to win. Now you just think about kind of flush it and move on to moving on to Fluor Field, and you get into that second game, and you do a good job in the first inning in the top of the first of not letting a leadoff triple come back to bite you with a great play by Kennedy Jones on the outfield fly ball and him throwing the runner out at home. And you felt like South Carolina had a lot of momentum at that point. You get bases loaded, nobody out, and you can't find a way to score. And that kind of felt like that was a major turning point for South Carolina in that series and really in that game, because from that point on, it was really kind of a struggle offensively to get going, while Clemson, I think, really snatched the momentum back at that moment and kind of took off from there.
Yeah, and you look at game 2, Gamecocks lost 5-1. Clemson had 6 hits, 6 left on base.
Think we may have lost Matt right there. I think let's see if we can bring it back. Think we may have lost him, but just to kind of build off of that, thinking about this Clemson baseball series, I think it's just, when you look at it, South Carolina had some good things going pitching, especially starting wise. They got some good innings from, those. You think about in that first game, Matthew Becker had a little bit of trouble early on, but did what he had to do to kind of get keep the game within reach for South Carolina. But then the Gamecocks just really couldn't get enough going offensively in that game 1. And really, when you look at game 2 and 3, it was kind of the same thing. Pitching wise, I thought Dylan Eskew and Jake McCoy did enough of what they were supposed to do, but I think it just got to the point where offensively they couldn't keep up, and then Clemson took advantage of that and then kind of moved on and did what they had to do to win that series. Let's see. While we're trying to figure out if we can get Matt back, or maybe take another quick break real quick to see if we can figure out some of these technical difficulties. We apologize. We knew we may have a little bit of issues here with this one, but we'll be right back to see if we can get Matt back on.
Mike here for one of the better dining options in the capital city. When I first moved there, I asked people around the radio station, where are the best wings? Well, the consensus was D's Wings. That was then. Today, they still have the best wings, but it's so much more. Now in their new location at 415 Meeting Street in West Columbia, yeah, they get voted the best wings on a routine basis. Yes, they get voted the best sports bar on a routine basis, but they're not just about wings, and really, they're not just a sports bar. It is a family-run local restaurant and bar with 20 TVs and 25 beers on tap. app. And how about these daily specials? Every Monday night at D's, you've got 75-cent wings from 4 until closing. Tacos on Tuesday. Then on Wednesday, 18 wings and a pitcher of beer for $29. You've also got ribs and oyster bucket specials on Thursday. And no matter how big the party is, 20 or more, no problem. Just call ahead of time and they'll take terrific care of you. They'll do takeout as well. And guess what? A human will answer the phone and take the order. Billy and his staff do an outstanding job. Check out D's, 415 Meeting Street in West Columbia.
All right, we got Matt back here. Looks like we got him back. Let's see. We can bring him up. There he is. All right, we're back.
Yeah. So I will say, though, D's wings. Like, I had wings tonight in Florence. Actually, I had them for lunch. And they are not the quality of D's wings. I miss D's wings all the time. But anyway, Alex, back to the baseball game. Like I said, I'm sorry. I'm going off bandwidth. Hope, cross your fingers, it'll be okay. But I felt like South Carolina in all three games was in it until the sixth or seventh inning. And then things, either you did not get the timely hit or you just, I feel like they were in it. 6, 7 innings. And I don't think the pitching staff did a poor job. I think that the guys just got to swing the bat and actually, get those guys that are on base home. What are your thoughts, Alex?
Yeah, and I was kind of saying right before, right as you went off and right before I let it go to break so we could figure out some of the things. I thought starting pitching-wise, they did enough for the most part in that game. I thought Jake McCoy gave him – he had an excellent outing on Saturday in Greenville. And, the pitching, especially from a starting perspective, I think the pitching from a starting perspective did enough that gives South Carolina every absolute chance to win that game. And I was talking about how Matthew Becker, gave up 4 early on in those first 2 innings, but really held off, let Carolina find a way to get back into that one. And then, Dylan Eskew, I thought had, a really good start. And you got to those mid to late innings and, South Carolina offensively, Saturday and Sunday, they just weren't getting anything going. And I think that maybe kind of wore on the pitching staff a little bit. And then, get into that Sunday game and Clemson hits that home run there. And in those late innings, it kind of really put it away. And you felt like South Carolina just wasn't going to be able to grab any momentum offensively because they hadn't shown enough throughout the weekend to do that.
Yeah, and then Sunday, I think Sunday was really, really difficult for a lot of Gamecock fans because you've already lost the series. And then at that point, you're watching the game, you want to at least grab one win. But at the same time, the series is lost. And I think, looking on Gamecock social media – looking at, the Big Spur where, you and I are both staff members, it was pretty not fun, to put it lightly. But, Alex, looking at this team right now, they're 10-3 on the season. Ethan Petrie, what can you say about that kid hitting 400? Nathan Hall is hitting 391 despite, what happened over the weekend. Jace Wada is one of my favorite players on the team right now, hitting 370, but nobody else is over 300. That's an everyday player. The team batting average is 268. They're going to have to improve there through 13 games, and I have no idea what's going on in the game right now, but they've left 109 batters on base. At some point, getting on base is great. They have a great on base percentage. They're getting hits, they're getting walks, or not really getting a lot of hits, but they're getting walks and they're getting hit by the pitcher and they're getting on base. But at some point, they're going to have to start shooting some stuff into the gap, shooting some stuff up the middle, the long home run.
Yeah, and I think the next step for this team is getting healthy. Obviously, we know Talmadge Lee Corey's. He got off to a really good start this season. Had the big hit in that first game to the 2-run, RBI double. And I think it's key to get him back healthy, both from an offensive and defensive perspective, because they really need him back. And obviously, then Kennedy Jones is dealing with a little bit of an injury too. So I think the next step now is just to get healthy, and then you come into the Morehead State series this weekend. You find a way, obviously, to finish the game tonight against Citadel, and then go into the Morehead State series. Who and that team's really good. And we were talking about it with JB earlier on the show. That team is a solid squad that they can come in there and challenge South Carolina this weekend. But the goal before you get to Oklahoma next weekend is just try to find some momentum offensively and kind of clean up some things from the pitching staff overall, but have your starters continue to do what they're doing for the most part. And just I think it's just the biggest thing right now with this team is get the bats going because they're going to need them come SEC play.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking at the pitching staff, they have a team ERA of 3.08, 155 strikeouts, and 111 innings. Only giving up 9 home runs through 13. I have no idea if Davidson hit a home run tonight. I don't know. But, opponents are only hitting 167 against the Gamecocks. And you can say, well, they've played nobody so far. And, maybe they haven't. But, Clemson didn't do a great job hitting against South Carolina. I think it was like 8, 5, and 6. So the pitching staff looks pretty daggum good. Looking at the overall SEC landscape, Alex, I don't know if you realize this, but 12 teams are in the top 25. I'll run through them really quick. Number 1, LSU. Number 2, Tennessee. Number 3, Arkansas. 5, Georgia. 7, Florida. 12, Texas. 13, Oklahoma. 14, Texas A&M. 17, Ole Miss. 18, Vanderbilt. 22, Auburn. And 23, Alabama. So, I thought that the Gamecock men's basketball schedule was ridiculous this year, especially, like 8 games through non-conference play. But I think that, South Carolina and every SEC baseball team is going to have a ridiculous time getting through it. And we all know the Gamecocks play North Carolina. They've already played Clemson. It's a pretty ridiculous run they have to go through, Alex.
Yeah, and when you look at the schedule, obviously we talk about Morehead State, then you got Oklahoma coming in next weekend, who, when you saw that series, first beginning of the year, you thought, okay, maybe that's a chance for South Carolina to get off to a good start, and they still can, but Oklahoma has really taken a big step forward and have gotten some really quality wins, and that's, not that any series in the SEC is hard, but easy, but that one's going to be really difficult, and you got them at home, so I think you got to find a way, obviously, to get 2 out of 3 there before you enter a stretch of playing at Arkansas, home against Tennessee, at Mississippi State, at Texas A&M. That's a brutal stretch, and it's going to be that way throughout the whole SEC. So just got to continue to find a way to clean things up and get some things going.
Yeah, and look, Alex, I think that that's just the way it's going to be at every sport at South Carolina. And I know all this ACC talk and ACC stuff about what they might be doing, might not be doing in 5 to 6 years, but it's a tough road to hoe, man. Even looking at softball, I saw EXO talking about softball here. Softball is 19-0, ranked 9, 9, 11, and 11 in the top 4 major polls. They had a big sweep against Duke this past weekend. But they're playing Youngstown State right now. I have no idea what the score is, but
10-2. They won.
They're going to go to Oklahoma. They won? Yeah.
Yeah, 10-2.
So 20-0, 10-2, but they're going to go to Oklahoma this upcoming weekend. And for those of you that don't know, Oklahoma is kind of like Don Staley's Gamecocks for the past 10 years, except more dominant. I don't know how many national championships they've won over the last 10 years, but I would venture to say it's 7 or 8. It's like UConn women's basketball back in the day. But the team was hitting going to the game tonight 369. Opponents were hitting 226. The Gamecocks had a 487 on base percentage. Ariana Rhodey, have you been taking account of her, Alex? It's ridiculous.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
Yeah, that girl has 8 home runs, 29 RBIs, and she has 49 at-bats and 49 total bases for a 1,000 slugging percentage. That is pretty crazy. The team ERA is 2.08. I'm excited to watch this team play the rest of the way, but Oklahoma is going to be a test. And look, I know Ashley Woodard is someone that's fired up to be here, and goodness gracious, 20-0. What can you say about her? But wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible what she's done early on. So, I mean, what a job by her and her staff to really get this thing flipped around this quickly. And obviously, Oklahoma this weekend going to Oklahoma, a team that's won 4 straight. I mean, that's going to be a tall task, but I mean, they've shown they can compete with some of the best. I mean, I think you went into this Duke series this past weekend thinking, all right, let's kind of see what this team is about. It's obviously that's going to be their toughest test, and they go to Duke, who was a top 10 team, and sweep them. I mean, that is
Yeah.
just a huge, huge impression. And so now they have all the momentum, and you got to go and see you find a way to do something in Oklahoma, which a lot of teams have not been able to go there and have a lot of success. But it's a confident team, and what an incredible job actually Chastain Woodard's done so far.
Yeah, and for me, like, it's must watch TV to watch the softball team, and especially when you're going to have multiple cameras at the game against Oklahoma. My wife played softball, and like she can tell me everything about the game, and I'm just having fun learning. Watching the Gamecocks women's team, Gamecock softball team. There's no women's baseball team, but anyway, a lot of fun. Alex, moving on to the men's basketball team, we're talking a little basketball. I thought, and you touched on the top. I don't know if there's much more to say, but the men got a great win against Arkansas over the weekend. Won by 20 plus points. Had a lead as much as I think by 32, and then obviously last night was not kind of tough. Pretty tough against Georgia. Georgia never trailed in the game. The Gamecocks got it down to 1 or 2 or 3 points a couple times, but just really couldn't push over the edge. What were your thoughts of that game inside the arena?
Yeah, when you kind of look at the stats or thinking back to that game, South Carolina just kind of really put themselves in a huge hole early on in the first half. And a lot of that's a credit to Georgia. I mean, they offensively were really good in that game. And Silas Demery and Blue Cane were also really, especially in that first half as well, to allow Georgia to have a 40-point first half. And you're down 11 at halftime. South Carolina doesn't quit. They found a way to battle back, get it down to 2. Or I think, it was 2 in the middle of the second half, and had a chance to get the ball back and take it down the other way to see if you can tie or take the lead. But Georgia gets an offensive rebound and immediately finds Blue Cane in the corner wide open for a 3. That's the start of a stretch. And then Blue Cane hits another 3, kind of just almost like a heat check 3, and he drains it. And really, Georgia kind of pulled it away from that point. South kind of got it back down to in that 4 or 5 range, but you kind of felt at that point Georgia had all the momentum, and they kind of just pulled away there at the end. But some of the stats that really kind of stand out in this game were, and I said this earlier on the show too at JB, was, if you would have told me that South Carolina was going to hit 10 threes in this game while Georgia hits 5, and South Carolina only turns the ball over 5 times, I'm probably going to tell you that South Carolina is going to win that game. But the big difference in the game was a couple things. One, South Carolina hit 10 3-pointers, but only 19 total field goals. So it was really just those 3-pointers are kind of keeping them in that game. And they couldn't get a whole lot going from mid-range or inside other than Colin Murray Bullets, who really just every game's going to get his points. But, Georgia really did a nice job in the paint defensively, not letting South Carolina get many second chance opportunities, or just did a good job controlling the paint and really, out-rebounding South Carolina 37-23, while the bench outscored South Carolina 24-9. And it came down to Georgia, made a few more plays than South Carolina and kind of did a little bit more of the little things in that game right. And I think it was just really the guard play. Really, when you look at Silas Demery and Blue Cane, really were the difference in that game. I really like watching Silas Demery play. He kind of controls that Georgia team, and it's a straw that stirs a drink for them. And he's really good, and he's a scorer. And I thought he just really handled everything in that game well. It's kind of the difference in that matchup.
Yeah, Alex, and it's tough because I always say, like, I can look at the box score and figure out why a team won or lost, but exactly what you said, if you hit 10 threes in a game, it's very unlikely you're going to lose the game. You get a double-digit threes, you're probably going to win, but when you only make 9 other field goals and everything else is from the foul line, kind of tough. But there were a lot of loose balls that I thought the Gamecocks hustled for and just didn't get. Sometimes the ball bounces that way. So tough for the Gamecocks, but they're going to have to regroup. They have Tennessee coming up this weekend on the road. Tennessee, I think they're like a 12-5 or 11-6 team right now in the SEC. Yeah. I'll be honest, I haven't looked at the standings as much as I normally do when the Gamecocks are doing well, especially last year. The Gamecocks were doing a great job, and I was looking at all the tiebreakers and crunching the numbers. But South Carolina has not played Tennessee well. They haven't played Auburn well. Some of these top teams in the conference that, overall, like, haven't played Alabama well. It's probably going to be a tough ask for the Gamecocks to go win on senior night at Tennessee. But, that line's probably going to be around 20. I don't know. I would say I haven't looked at Camp Alex, but I would say around 20.
Yeah, I mean, look at kind of the lines recently for South Carolina at home games or in home games. South Carolina I think they were a favorite at one point yesterday in this game, and then I think it got to where Georgia ended up being around a 1-point favorite. But Vegas kind of had seen that South Carolina was playing well at home and were really paying attention to that. I think kind of on the flip side that they're going to see that South Carolina hasn't played well. Yeah, and I mean, they're going to kind of see that South Carolina hasn't played well on the road. You think back to LSU, they really struggled. Florida, you're in that game at halftime. Florida ran away with it in the second half. Then you had the Missouri game, who Missouri just shot really well, but South Carolina didn't play great in that game and kind of helped that as well. And it just hasn't been good on the road here recently. So I mean, it's kind of go there, I think, to Tennessee, and maybe you just play with nothing to lose and see what you can do. I think we may be losing Matt again. I believe we did. I could hear him a little bit, maybe. And we may have lost him again. But, yeah, just kind of continue with basketball. I thought, going back, kind of just a couple more thoughts on this Georgia game. I thought Colin Murray Bowles just continues to play unreal. I mean, his last 3 games have been unbelievable. Really 4 games, to be honest. And he did kind of all of it for South Carolina last night, having 24 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, and 35 minutes of play. Nick Pringle gave them a pretty solid game as well, 11 points with 3 rebounds and 2 assists in 24 minutes of play. But, I think they just didn't get quite enough from anybody else in that one to find a way to pull a win out from against Georgia. Let's see. I think we may be trying to get Matt back here. There he is again. Are you back?
Yeah, it's super frustrating. I'm doing the best I can, so I appreciate all of y'all for sticking with me.
No, we're good.
But yeah, so the Tennessee game is going to be tough. SEC tournament, Alex, do you think there's any chance the Gamecocks can make a run?
I don't know. I think we'll see what they do against Tennessee, but not with the way they've played away from Colonial Life Arena probably has to worry you a little bit. With South Carolina going to be the 16 seed in that tournament, I think you're going to be playing the 9 seed, and I think there's still some figuring out there that they have to do to see how that shakes out. But I wouldn't put anything past them. I wouldn't be surprised if they find a way to win a game or 2, but it's not going to be easy, especially with who they're going to have to be matched up against. And they're going to have to find a way to have some more success away from Colonial Life Arena. Yeah, and obviously they only got one more try to do that against Tennessee, which is not going to be easy. But we'll see what they can do.
Yeah, the only bright spot I can think of, Alex, is that last year they were pretty good on neutral courts. SEC tournament is a neutral court. It's probably going to be Kentucky fans. They're probably going to go be there. And I hope you guys can hear me because this is very frustrating. But Alex, can you hear me?
Yeah, you're good. You're breaking up a little bit, but you're
good.
Yeah.
Oh God, it's so terrible. All right, so talking really quickly about the women's team. The women, they finished tied for first in the SEC during the regular season. Dawn Staley did not win her 5th straight SEC Coach of the Year award, but they did win the number 1 seed in the SEC tournament by virtue of coin flip. The women's team will not take the court until Friday. Alex, I think that this women's team should probably be in the 1 seed line. They have more quad 1, quad 2 wins, I think, anybody. But Alex, your thoughts on what the Gamecocks need to do this week in Greenville, South Carolina?
Yeah, I think they have a lot of really quality wins, and I think they still are very well can get into that 1 seed talking. I think you like their chances to make the SEC championship game. And, I think I wonder, I believe if they even get to the semifinals or championship game, they can absolutely earn that number 1 seed. And I think, when I wonder, it's going to depend too what happens around outside when some of those teams like Notre Dame, see what they do in their ACC tournament, and all those other teams at UConn. What happens on the UCLA, some of those teams, see what happens. But they kind of continue to play well, and I think they've had some bright spots to kind of build off maybe a little bit more of that UConn game, and we'll see what they can do here moving forward.
Yeah, and Alex, we'll see what happens. I think the Gamecocks have a good chance. Notre Dame's best player, I think, is injured right now, so we'll see what they do in the ACC tournament. But South Carolina should be one of the top 4 seeds, which it's crazy to think a team with was it 3 losses is potentially not going to be a number 1 seed in the women's tournament.
Yeah,
but that's the way the cookie crumbles sometimes, and you're gonna have to run through Texas at some point. You beat Texas by I can't remember what the score is. You beat them at home. You lost on the road. Maybe this is just going to be the tiebreaker.
Yeah, I think so. Their resume is really good, and we kind of talked about how many quality wins they have. Like, it's not going to take much for them to get back into really that safe 1 seed talking. Obviously, if they win the SEC tournament, I think they're obviously absolutely going to be a 1 seed. And I think it's just, it just then once you get to the NCAA tournament, it all just depends on matchups. How those matchups shake out. Same thing, and really just about every playoff scenario in any sports, just how do you match up with teams? And South Carolina's got another really good shot to go get another national championship if they build continue playing as well as they have been playing here recently, and then just build on that in the SEC tournament and take it into the NCAA tournament.
So with that, Alex, let's close out the show. What's it called? Like, it's not the quiet period, but it's something where now coaches can actually talk to kids, have them on campus, but they can't go see kids. So that has started, Alex. And, looking through this Gamecock recruiting class, this class is ranked 20th in the country as it stands right now. 8th in the SEC, which is pretty standard. I feel like the SEC just gets better and better in every single sport, every single year. But they got 4-star defensive back Jazavion Currents, 3-star defensive back Peyton Dwyer, 3-star edge Keenan Britt, 3-star tight end Jamel House, and 3-star offensive lineman Anthony Baxter. So they have a foundation, I think, and I'm a big proponent of if this coaching staff takes a kid early. Who knows? That maybe it's a coin flip. It could be the next Nikki Muwari. It could be the next, pick your Gamecock player that has done well, that's been picked up early. But, Alex, like, just starting out here, how many players do you think the Gamecocks will take in this class?
It may be still a little too early to say, because I think some of the numbers you kind of wait to see what's going to happen, with the roster. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's somewhere around the same number as they were last year, just because, you just always these days continue to build a roster just because you never know who you're going to lose, what's the, attrition going to look like. But I think they're probably going to be fairly close as we stand right now to the same number they had last year.
Well, what was the number last year, Alex? I can't remember.
Pulling it up to make sure I had it right, because I was about to say.
I think it was like 23.
26.
26. So, there's still 21 kids that are going to come on board for the Gamecocks potentially. And look, we'll talk all about the transfer portal when it opens. And Alex and I, next week is a week away from spring practice starting. So Alex and I will give you our take on spring practice storylines, what we're looking for, what we want to see, what we hope the Gamecocks do. But Alex, starting the quarterback position, let's kind of set up this recruiting board for South Carolina. At quarterback, I think the two names are Duckworth and Smeagol. Is there anybody else the Gamecocks are really going after at this point or have offered?
They've also, yeah, you're right. Those are the two names really that are top of the board right now for South Carolina. South Carolina, obviously, Jerry Curtis was in there too, but he's kind of trimmed his list down. He's in Georgia or Oregon right now, so really it's Landon Duckworth or Brady Smeagol from Duckworth, the former commitment, who backed off his pledge, but is still very interested in South Carolina, and he's one who kind of continues to rise in rankings a little bit, and I think he's going to continue to do so because he's really good. South Carolina continues to be in there, and we'll see kind of from a spring visit wise what happens. And hasn't officially scheduled an official visit, but it sounds like South Carolina's absolutely in the running for that as well. And Brady Smeagol's kind of an interesting one. Was committed to FSU and had some coaching changes there at Florida State and backed off that pledge, but now it seems like there's a lot of interest there. He's going to be in for a spring visit as well. And we'll see maybe around that time for the spring visit, they'll schedule an official visit for the summer. But, when you think about those with Duckworth, kind of going back to him, Ole Miss is also in there. I think FSU is one to watch. I think Georgia could be one to watch as well. So it's going to be stiff competition for both of these guys. And South Carolina's also offered, they've got a few other offers out there right now. And, but a lot of these guys, I think when you look at the right now from where we stand, Duckworth and Smeagol are the two that they're really going after.
Yeah, and Duckworth, I think the latest 24/7 rankings was top 70 in the country overall. Smeagol was top 120 in the country overall, somewhere around there. Quarterback's so hard. It's so hard to recruit because, you have a Lenore Sellers who was a 3-star and because of injuries and probably not scouted properly, but you just never know what these guys are going to be. But it's always good to find the guys that, other programs won't. And the recruiting guys say are pretty good too. But so they're kind of zeroed in on 2 guys. We'll see what happens with each of them. And obviously unofficial visits, official visits will happen as we continue through the process. And for all the players we're about to talk about. But Alex, can you run through running back really quick?
Yeah, top target on the board, I think for South Carolina and really maybe kind of overall, not just a running back, but Carson Baker, 6 foot 195 running back out of Fairborn, Georgia, and Langston Hughes High School. South Carolina's kind of really been all over him and really continue to recruit him hard. And right now, I think it seems like maybe Texas A&M, Ohio State, Georgia, and Carolina are kind of right up there as the 4 to really watch with him. Clemson also just recently offered and could be scheduled an official there. But, official hasn't been scheduled quite yet with Carson Baker. But, I think that's one to watch. And they, Markel Blackwell, Shane Beamer, those guys have really kind of zeroed in on him at running back. And, another one to kind of keep an eye on here to see what happens is Jerrion Campbell out of Powder Springs. He right now has official visits at Georgia Tech and Indiana. And we'll see. I think it just kind of depends on how the running back board kind of evolves. But he's one that South Carolina's had their eye on for a little while. And I would say right now those are 2 to really watch at running back. Obviously I think everybody's going to wonder about Jalen McGill, who out of Spartanburg, who decommitted from Rutgers. And we'll see. Right now I think they're keeping an eye on him. But right now I really think watch out for Carson. They're really Carson Baker's the top target right now.
Yeah, I think it'll be tough for the Gamecocks if they miss out on him. And he's not a guy that's ranked in the top 100, at least on 24/7. He's the guy that kind of identified and other programs have identified as potentially being that guy. Moving on to wide receiver, Alex, there was a big class last year, arguably the best class in Gamecock history from a recruiting standpoint. How many guys do you think they're going to go after, and who are those players?
Yeah, right now the 2 that South Carolina seems to be really high on and really in on are Ryan Mosley at Carrollton, Georgia. And he's one that, I saw him at the Under Armour camp at Carrollton a few weeks ago, maybe closer to a month now. He's 6'4", 206 and looks also like really good. Like he can come in and play right away. Guy who is a composite 4-star, top 180 guy. The 24/7 has him as a 3-star right now, but I think he could be one that continue to rise the rankings. And it kind of feels like this one could come down to a South Carolina or Georgia battle for him. Texas and Nebraska have also made a push there. But it feels like, South Carolina's put themselves in a really good spot, but you always have to watch out for Georgia with those in-state guys. I think it could really come down to those two, but, he's really built a strong bond with Mike Furry, and we'll see. I think, see if you can get him in on that official visit on that June 6th weekend and see what you can do. Then really the other guy right now to keep a close eye on is Gordon Sellers out of Providence Day School in Charlotte, and he's another one, Matt. I think you and I actually both saw him together when we were at the Carolinas camp, and you could tell how much the coaching staff really liked him. He got 4-star guy by both the composite rankings and 24/7. Just outside the 200 in the national rankings and the composite, but there's it's another one of those to watch out for Georgia too as well. I mean, they're recruiting him hard, and so is Clemson. I think you got to watch out for Clemson as well. He's going to go to Clemson for an official May 30th. He's also coming to South Carolina June 6th, and then going to Georgia June 13th and Michigan June 20th. It could be one that you could see come down to Georgia, Clemson, and South Carolina. But Mike Furry, we've seen some what he can do recruiting last year with building that class. That's, really good. And so just kind of continue to watch those guys. And Gordon Sellers is also going to be back in the spring a few times as well. And I think that's a pretty good sign for South Carolina for where they stand with him. There's, a few names you see maybe pop up on the board, and Nayland Scott is a guy to really kind of watch out for as well. South Carolina's offered, but we'll see. He's a teammate with Jerrion Campbell over in Powder Springs. So right now, another one I had to throw out there too is Travis Johnson. He out of Virginia. He's scheduled an official visit with South Carolina, but South Carolina, obviously there's some interest there on both sides with him scheduling the official visit. But the two right now that seem to be right up there are Gordon Sellers and Ryan Mosley.
And I think both those guys, if you're on the message boards, you see people talking about we need some wide receivers with size. And both those guys do have size. I think you said Mosley 6'4". I saw Gordon Sellers in person. Every bit of 6'4". If he's 200 pounds right now, that's awesome, because he did not look 200 pounds over the summer. But you never know. Muscle weighs more than fat. To quote heavyweights. So you never know. But Alex, let's go ahead and talk about tight end and offensive line. And, I just want to give everybody an in-depth, thought process of what's going on.
Yeah, so obviously got Jamel House already committed out of Newberry, and I think that's the guy who we talk about guys who continue rising the rankings. He could absolutely be one of those guys. I really enjoy watching his film and think he's going to rise the rankings. Already a 4-star in the composite, and I think that he committed. I think it was in October, early October. And that was one where South Carolina's kind of going that stretch of landing commitments, and he was one that went ahead and decided to commit to South Carolina. But right now, you think if you obviously got him in the class, a couple to maybe keep an eye on, or one really, DJ Howard, kind of just offered him pretty recently. So we'll see kind of what happens there. Kind of continue to build a relationship with him, or as Sean Elliott continues to build that relationship, and we'll see kind of how the numbers work out there. Obviously, with bringing in Mike Tartle last year and being that spot that obviously there's not as many numbers to that position as the other spots, but I think that's going to be an interesting spot or position to keep an eye on, just because they've already got one, and see if they go after a second one.
Okay, and then offensive line, Alex. There's a lot of guys that they've been targeting for a long time that are highly rated.
Yeah, you think about one, you think about Darius Gray, who, that guy, I think he got into top, he's a number 21 player in the country right now, and they've been all over him for a long time now, and I think he really likes South Carolina. He's also got a ton of official visits scheduled and is going to see a lot of different schools. So it's going to be, being that he's now by 24/7 Sports the number 1 interior offensive lineman in the country and number 21 overall player in the country. Obviously, you're going to expect a lot of heated competition for him. But South Carolina has recruited him for a long time, and I think he has built a strong bond with the coaching staff. And it seems like South Carolina's put themselves in a really good spot there. And let's see, a couple other guys. One, you keep an eye on Trey Aiken out of Clinton. He's offensive tackle, and South Carolina has put themselves in a good spot. I will say, I think just to keep an eye on Georgia Tech to see what happens there. Another one, you think about some of the rest of these in-state guys. This is another pretty solid year in-state wise with the offensive line. You got Zion Giles, who out of Carver's Bay. He's really good. A guy who's top 60 overall in the composite, 6'5", 280. they really have done a good job with him too, building that relationship. And he's another one as one of these offensive linemen who's going to be highly recruited. Got I think official visits to Clemson, Auburn, Georgia, Florida, South Carolina. So he'll be in that June 6th weekend, and we'll see what South Carolina's done. But another one of these guys that Lonnie Teasley and the rest of that staff really that work with the offensive lineman and the rest of the coaching staff really have done a good job recruiting him. And Desmond Green's another one. I mean, he's a guy out of Timberland that they've been after for a long time now, and we'll see. Kind of, I think
that's a guy I really like, Alex.
Desmond Green.
I really like Desmond Green.
Yeah, he's really. You watch him on film, he's really fun to watch, and he's physical. He got at 6'4.5", 54 pounds, and with him, it feels like it's the biggest competition for South Carolina's Georgia. They've I think kind of made him a priority there, and he's got 5 official visits right now, and he'll be in that June 20th weekend, which is kind of shaping up to be South Carolina's big weekend. But he's a guy who seen him in camp a few times, see him obviously watching his film. He's a really good offensive lineman. Another one of those guys that the state here recently has produced really good linemen. You think about these past few classes, and it's another one this year that South Carolina has a ton of options that they can go with, and we'll see kind of how that board shifts. Obviously, with Anthony Baxter already committed, and some guys that they you think about Darius Gray. Obviously, like I mentioned, South Carolina is really in on him, and so it'd be interesting to see how this board shakes up and how many they end up taking.
Yeah, Alex, and I think that if there's one position at South Carolina that the coaches can be selective in and really push for, it's offensive line, because they've done such a great job the last 2 years on the offensive line. So, I mean, recruiting's hit or miss. Like, we'll see how these recruits are looking, but really, actually, Alex, it's been 3 years in a row they've done a really good job recruiting offensive line. So we'll see how many they push for. We'll see how many they get, but South Carolina has a great story to sell there. Alex, moving on to defense, defensive line, linebacker, defensive back, just a couple guys you might want to highlight.
Yeah, we'll start, at the edge position. I think everybody knows about Rodney Dunham out of Myers Park, guy who, right now is a 4-star, but, he 24/7 has a number 14 overall, number 2 edge. I mean, South Carolina, he's been to South Carolina a lot, and I mean, South Carolina seems, right now has put themselves in a good spot. Just another one of these guys who, when you talk about South Carolina's recruiting class right now, they've been on for a while now, and now they're just having to maybe fight off some other guys. I think when you think about Rodney Dunham, you got Tennessee to watch out for. Tennessee has done a really nice job recruiting North Carolina and really that Charlotte area, and so we'll see kind of how that happens. But he's 6'4", 227. Just another one of these guys that Sterling Lucas has done a good job evaluating early and getting South Carolina in on pretty quickly, and has put themselves in a good spot. And another really interesting name at edge to watch is Julian Walker. It's 6'6", 230 at Dutch Fork, and he's a guy who has kind of was unknown kind of heading into his junior year, and he's the son of Jamil Walker, who's on the staff at South Carolina as an assistant strength coach. And I mean, he's 4-star. He just continues to rise the rankings, and you can see why when you watch him play. He just looks like one of these guys who is one of the top edges in the country, and kind of sits around that 150 mark by 24/7 Sports. But I mean, that's he sits at 150, but I mean, he was really kind of unranked before really his junior year. So he's a guy who's continued to get on the radar and land offers. But with the connection, I think South Carolina has put themselves in a good spot, and he's going to continue to take some visits. But we'll see. I think South Carolina sits in a decent spot with him. And kind of moving on down, let's move to kind of the interior.
Really quick, Alex. Oh no, really quick with Walker. It's a situation where this guy doesn't really go to camps. He doesn't really talk to anybody. He doesn't do interviews. The coaching staff was trying to sneak him under the radar, and I don't know if it's worked.
Yeah. To that point, like he really kind of he wasn't one of these.
Keep going through the rest of the defensive line.
Yeah, I was just saying, kind of at edge, he's not one that, or as a recruit, he's not one that's really tweeting out all the offers. He's kind of started doing that here recently, but it's been a really interesting recruitment to follow. And kind of getting down into the interior defensive line, those defensive tackles. South Carolina has kind of worked their way into the recruitment of Aiden Harris, who's a top 50 defensive lineman in the country out of Weddington and Matthews, North Carolina. I think, a few schools to watch with him are Ohio State and Auburn, but his interest has seemed to pick up there with him, and South Carolina is in a decent spot, and just continue to watch that recruitment to see how those guys continue to build that bond with him. And a couple other names to watch: Noah Clark, another North Carolina defensive lineman. It's kind of sitting here saying North Carolina, like you can tell how deep that state is this year, really at every position. I mean, Noah Clark, defensive line, a lot of good defensive linemen coming out of North Carolina, but he's another one. A guy that's 6'3", 318 pounds. Been to South Carolina a handful of times to visit. And I mean, Travion Robinson, those guys have done a nice job to get him, put themselves in the position that they're in. He's coming in for an official visit the June 6th weekend, and also has official visits scheduled to Virginia Tech, Duke, and NC State, Virginia. Just a few. I mean, so that's another one that they're right in as well. And we'll see kind of how the rest of this room or how this board fills out, but. Another one, Ben Boulware, is another one that's kind of rose to the board, I think, at South Carolina a little bit. And a guy who's a 3-star out of Oak Grove and Winston-Salem, North Carolina, but he's got a ton of really good offers. I mean, you think right now when you look at Southern Cal and Georgia and South Carolina have kind of maybe put themselves in the best position, but I mean, he's also got offers from schools like Auburn and like that. And official visit May 30th for South Carolina, but also has the April 11th and April 25th visits to Georgia and USC. So that interior, I think we talk about how important that defensive line room interior is, and especially from a numbers standpoint with what they lost this past year with those 4 defensive linemen that they lost in the interior. We'll see how that room continues to develop just from a numbers standpoint. And another one to keep an eye on is actually Brian Harris. Yeah, another one to keep an eye on is Brian Harris out of Jacksonville. He was, I think he was once committed to. Just keep watching him because he's got some official visits, but. To Stanford, West Virginia, and June or NC State, but South Carolina's also getting one June 20th, and it seems like they put them. I keep saying in a good spot, but they're in a good spot with him too. And Travion Robinson's done a good job, kind of building that relationship, and South Carolina's kind of continues to make themselves, known in that area and really at that position.
Well, I think that Travion just needs to get a couple of recruiting classes under his belt because it's so hard to make relationships, your first time through. You can be a former NFL player. You can be a former South Carolina great. But at the same time, like, who are you putting in the NFL? And that's what South Carolina is potentially going to do this upcoming draft, which will be huge for Travion. Huge, huge, huge for Travion, and huge for Sterling Lucas and this entire defensive staff. So very, very excited for, what's coming. And, Big Red, who is watching this right now, and I see him in the chat box, he follows his combine stuff and NFL draft stuff more than any other casual person that I know. And he is very high on the Gamecocks. So, Alex, moving on to linebacker, what are we seeing there? I know it's probably going to be a small class if they take, maybe 2-3. Yeah,
we'll see kind of how this board shakes out. Obviously, you got Keenan Britt committed right now, but I think it's just one where they're going to see if they can find anybody else that they kind of fit in that room. Obviously, with some guys they bring, it's still kind of a young room overall when you look at it. So obviously with one RAN, we'll see kind of how that room shakes out. But right now they kind of like where they are with Keenan Britt, and see where else, if anybody else kind of pops up, because obviously, as we all know, that the recruiting board's always kind of updating for them, and guys pop up all the time. You'll see, obviously, have a whole nother summer coming up. See who can pop up there, and then head into the season. There's always guys that seem to pop up at every position.
Yeah, JC says keep an eye on the kid from Orangeburg, Wilkinson, as a late riser. I'm not familiar with them, Alex. Are you familiar with them?
Sorry, say that again. You kind of broke up a little bit.
Hate to put you on the spot, but JC.
No, you broke up a little bit. What'd you say?
JC said there's a kid from Orangeburg, Wilkinson. Do you have a name?
Jordan Avinger.
Provide it.
Jordan Avinger. Yeah, just kind of we'll see kind of what happens there. I think that's one to watch. Right now he's got kind of 6'3", 225. He's 3-star out of Orangeburg, Wilkinson. Like he's got some pretty good offers. USF, East Carolina, App State, and could be one of those guys to watch just as a guy who maybe comes to a camp or South Carolina continues to evaluate. But that linebacker class is one that's really interesting just with what they have numbers wise.
So in the defensive backfield, I mean, obviously they have Xavion Currents. They have another kid committed, a 3-star And I always remind people that 3 stars don't mean you're crap. Like 3 stars mean you're above average. But how many guys are they going to take, and who are they focusing on right now, Alex?
Yeah, kind of at that secondary is going to be interesting. Cornerback, you think obviously, or a safety, Jazavian Currents. You got him, or a guy who's a 5 or continue maybe potentially work his way into a 5-star rank, but guy who rose the rankings here in this update today or yesterday, guy who all the way up to 53. But at that corner spot, Samari Matthews out of North Carolina is really a guy who they've recruited for a long time, and he's another one of these guys who's visited South Carolina a lot. And I think South Carolina's put themselves in a good spot. And with him, watch for Clemson. Maybe watch out. I think they could be one to. It could be come down to a South Carolina Clemson battle. But he's one who, he's really good. I really like watching his film, and I think South Carolina's put themselves in a good spot. Another one to maybe keep an eye on is Kari Adams out of Maryland. He's another one of these top defensive backs or cornerbacks that Torian Gray has South Carolina on, a guy who's top 30 in the country right now, and he's got an official visit scheduled for May 30th. But he's also got, you can tell how highly recruited he is by his official visit schedule. Southern Cal June 3rd, Penn State June 6th, Notre Dame June 13th, and Oregon June 20th. So, cornerback's always a spot. Especially under Torian Gray, they're always trying to identify to see who they can find in that class, because obviously they got Peyton Dyer right now. I saw that guy in Carrollton too, and he was one of the top guys at that camp. And from a physicality standpoint, but then just with his play, and being a guy that's from Duluth, Georgia, and in-state Georgia guy, just watch for Georgia, see what happens there. And he's got official visits to 3 schools right now, with South Carolina being the June 20th one. But South Carolina continues to have them committed, and it seems like things are good right there with him for him. So that defensive back boards continue to kind of evaluate, and we'll see what happens there. But that's some of the main guys to watch out for.
Yeah, it's crazy, Alex. We talk about it being March 5th right now, and before we know it, it's going to be June 20th. And then June 23rd, we're going to have a show, and we're going to be talking about these official visits. Wow. Absolutely unbelievable.
Yeah, I was just going to move to safety real quick. I forgot to mention Contavian Polo Anderson, who's in Dorman. that guy, he's really good as well. And I think Clemson, keep an eye on Clemson with him. South Carolina got in early, but Clemson, seems to be, kind of trending a little bit. So we'll see what happens there. He's another one of these in-state safeties who's kind of, continues to see his rankings rise, and he's a guy who's 118th overall in the country right now. And another guy, another safety, obviously we know about Rock Hill defensive backs, but this is another one, Tamarian Watkins, Northwestern High School. He helped Northwestern lead to a state championship. And he's a guy South Carolina identified really early on, got him into camp early in the summer, and then offered him, and his recruitment's really taken off. He's a guy who right now sits at 300 in the composite, 302 in the composite, but he's got an offer from Georgia. He's got Alabama. Texas A&M's also offered, and I think he'll continue to rise the rankings, but a guy that maybe could continue just receiving interest from all these schools. Florida State have also offered, but South Carolina really, I think, of all those guys, Tamarian Watkins is right up there from, chance for South Carolina to land, because I think there's a lot of interest between both sides there.
Yeah, Tamarian Watkins is the kid that I think that the Gamecocks need to find a way to get. However they do it, find a way to get that kid. I don't care what his ranking is. He's a beast, and he is that might be the next Nick Imanwari from, just a freak standpoint, because he's kind of freaky with that athleticism.
You can see that with him, and you can really kind of see that with Jazavian Currents as well. That's a guy, just from a size standpoint, 6'3", 205, and obviously a little bit different recruitments between Jazavian Currents and Nick Imanwari, because Nick Imanwari is kind of a late riser, and did rise the rankings a little bit, but he was a guy.
But it was also COVID, like it was a weird time frame.
Right, like obviously, the different times then, but Currents is one that he's just really intriguing, because he's another one of these guys that it feels like South Carolina recruited for a long time, but you always want to get guys from Rock Hill, especially DBs. It seems like they always turn out, and he could be the next one. He could be. You see a lot of similarities, and I think the key would be for him is come in and continue to develop and kind of take the path that Nick Imanwari take to continue to improve and then put up those crazy numbers that he put up at the combine. That some of the numbers Nick Imanwari did were just unreal.
Yeah. So Alex, I didn't tell you about this, but go ahead and do the 2027 and 2028 class now.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, we'll have to do another show on that one.
I'm just kidding. But y'all, I appreciate everyone dealing with all of the audio, video difficulties. I'm doing the best I can. But Alex, you were a fountain of knowledge tonight. Greatly appreciate it. And look, recruiting is about to start picking up. It's going to be crazy. Stuff's going to come hot and heavy. We have spring practice starting in a week. I will be talking about spring practice and our storylines and what we're looking for next on the show. But Gamecock men's basketball team still has a game against Tennessee on the road this weekend. Obviously, softball won tonight. They have a big series against Oklahoma. The Gamecocks. Alex, do you know what the score is on the baseball game before we get out of here?
Let me try to pull it up. It was 5-1 last check.
Yeah. Well, while he's pulling it up, a lot of stuff still going on around South Carolina. What's the score, Alex?
It is, well, in typical form for this show, the internet's not cooperating. Here we go. It's 5-1, bottom of the 7th.
Okay. So everyone go watch the rest of this baseball game. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. As I say it on every single show, when you give us your time, it's a valuable thing that you have. We appreciate it. We never take it for granted. And thank you so much for all the comments tonight. Thank you so much for everyone listening, everyone watching. And Alex and I will be back next week. And Alex, any parting shots before we get out of here?
No, I think, just continue to hang around. Like you said, I appreciate everybody tuning back in tonight. It's always fun to get on here to talk, whatever sport that's going on. Obviously, men's basketball, football. Practice is almost here, and it's almost time to get back going into football and sleeps. But spring practice is going to be in different storylines to kind of keep up with and see what you can track.
It's a wild time. Well, we thank you all for being with us tonight, and we will talk to you next week. Have a great one. See you guys.